Hello and welcome to Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. I'm your host, CJ Baumgartner, wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, whether it is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, or if it is on Facebook, if it is on Twitter or X or whatever the kids are calling it now these days, or if it's on YouTube as well. Thank you for listening to Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. And boy, do we got a lot to talk about. A lot since the last time. The tone of this show sure feels a whole heck of a lot different because the Minnesota Twins, the last time we talked, that the Cleveland Guardians took 2 out of 3 from them, and the Twins lost out on some waiver claims. And it really felt like for a second, it was just, gosh, like what the heck is going on with the Twins? Not only did they lose 2 out of 3 in a team in Cleveland that they had a chance to bury, but also Cleveland kind of took that newfound optimism and decided to use it into getting some additional waiver claims. And they took, as we talked about in the last episode, Giolito. They took Matt Moore and they took Ronaldo Lopez. Lucas Giolito, a starter, of course, pitched for the White Sox, a very big thorn in the Twins' side over the years. And there was also a Matt Moore left-handed bullpen arm, which the Twins could have used, and a right-handed bullpen arm in Ronaldo Lopez, who, again, the Twins could have used. And it gets into this discussion that we had on the podcast last week with the Twins, and it was, boy, is that going to come back to haunt them? Should the Twins be scared for the division? Now, of course, I said no last week because the Twins were still like at a 95% chance to win the American League Central. Like they're still in the driver's seat. It's just more or less how hard is this going to be down the stretch? And Cleveland was at least going to say, we're going to make it just a little bit harder on you to try and get that done. And as I talked about on the podcast last week, I said, guys, don't really be worried about that. You can go back to the podcast and listen. You can, I said the Twins, I'm not really in on Lucas Giolito. If I was Derek Falvey, I would not have put a waiver claim in on Giolito. I said he's too broken this year. You can't rely on him, especially as a starter. The Twins already have starting pitching depth. There was just no need to bring in Lucas Giolito. He's so cooked that you need a whole offseason to work with him. I said that again on last week's podcast. I said, you're going to need a whole winter, sit down, send him to Driveline or wherever. And he needs to sit down and work on his stuff, have a full spring training and off season and try and figure this out. Well, the Guardians picked him up. And not only did they pick him up, they started him against the Twins in game 1 of this big, big series between the Guardians and the Twins in Cleveland. And Lucas Giolito proceeds to give up 9 runs in 3 innings and has a position player, of all people, giving up less runs than Lucas Giolito did. Twins absolutely clobbered him. Royce Lewis had another grand slam. Again, we'll get to him in a second, but just overall, this big series in Cleveland, this was preceded by the Twins winning 2 out of 3 in Texas. A big series win just kind of keeps the momentum going, especially because Cleveland took 2 out of 3 against Tampa Bay. So the Twins didn't lose any ground. They didn't gain any ground in the division. And it was all kind of culminating in this 3-game series. This was the last time that these two teams are going to play each other in 2023. And this is Cleveland's best chance to really whittle down that division lead. If Cleveland sweeps and it's a 2-game lead with 19 to go or however many are left, then you look at it and you say, okay, well, this division race just got a whole heck of a lot more interesting really, really quick. The Twins they won game 1, 20-6 or whatever the final score ended up being. They end up coming back to win game 2, 8-3 as well. And then they lose earlier this afternoon by a score of 2-1. But the Twins really do the main job of getting those 2 wins and just chipping away at the Guardians' self-confidence of just basically taking away that will to want to keep competing for the division. And they did that. The Twins, it felt like a really demoralizing series for Cleveland. It felt like the series last year, if you're the Twins playing Cleveland in 2021, just the way that they would go about it, the way that the Twins would lose games in backbreaking fashion. Emilio Pagano would go out and blow leads. The Twins would be rolling out a double-A lineup. There was no confidence going into that series, and the Twins really just punched them in the mouth, and they really couldn't respond. Now, the Twins did lose today, but, rain delay, all that kind of going in. We'll get to more of that game in a second, but I think really this kind of ties into in game 1, the Twins just jumped out early. They attacked They took a lot of good at-bats against Giolito, and they won. My one gripe with game one is that things got off the rails really quick with Terry Francona wanting to save his bullpen for some reason. I mean, I get why, because it's the biggest series of the year, but there's expanded rosters. I get it's not as expanded as it was before. You still have 28 guys, which means 14 pitchers on your roster. You take away the 4 other starters in the rotation in Giolito. Okay, cool. You have 9 pitchers. 9 pitchers you can use. Cleveland already burned through 2 of them. And so they brought in James Fry, Bill Fry, French Fry. I don't know. They brought him in. He pitched. He threw like 4, and he pitched the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. He pitched 4 innings in that game, gave up 8 runs, and gave up a couple moonshots to Gallo and to Farmer and Wallner, and it was ugly. But like, my whole thing with Terry Francona is, what the heck, man? Terry Francona is a great manager, Hall of Fame manager, like that, nothing personally, but what the heck are you doing in that situation? Because here's the thing. Nobody had used a position player as a pitcher like that before. Normally they come in the 8th, 9th inning, and now this is going to pave the way for everybody to start doing that more. Now, when position players pitching rather first became a thing around like 2017, 2019, somewhere in that range, it was really fun. Like, it was fun watching Rizzo go on the mound and strike out Freddie Freeman or something like that. It was fun to get to see guys messing around and do that. And now you got Willie Castro out there throwing 40-mile-an-hour eephuses. I don't know where's there's no entertainment value in that anymore. It's just ugly. The game got sloppy. Brent Hedrick was hitting guys because he was so wild, and the Guardians were trying to fight over that for some reason. Really not a great day for the Cleveland Guardians. It was really a clown show for them on Monday night. And really, for Terry Francona, I don't know why he's doing this. He's got a full bullpen, and why he decides that it's important to save his pitchers, but he's the one who pulled Giolito after 3. He's the one who only let his other 2 guys go 4th inning, 5th inning. It's not my fault that he's not willing to commit to somebody to eat innings in that game, because, by the way, you're not going to use that guy anyway. So let him pitch a couple more innings. Let a low leverage guy come in. Why are you doing this? Like, I get the imperative. He doesn't want his pitchers to get hurt. He doesn't want that to happen, but it's just not within the spirit of the game. And I'm going to sound like an old fart on this one, but like, what's the point here? Like, if we're just going to do that, then if a team is down 8-0 in the 2nd inning, what's to stop a team from just going, well, we lost? And what happens when that happens in a playoff game? Because Terry Francona, again, strategy-wise, did the right thing, but also just in terms of kind of keeping the game not pure, but keeping the game in check and making sure it's an actual competitive game for both sides, doesn't do you any good to do what Terry Francona did in that situation. Because what happens when a team does that in the playoffs? If the Twins are losing 8-0 in a playoff game in the 4th inning, and Rocco decides to bring in Willie Castro to pitch again for 5 innings. Like, yeah, it's not a good baseball, but at least Rocco got to save his pitchers. I mean, Major League Baseball is going to have to find some way to address that, because it's ridiculous. I was making a little tirade against nobody but myself on Twitter about how dumb that is, because the Twins, meanwhile, had to pitch Brent Hedrick. They had to, who they bring in? Dylan Floro to close out the game. They had to bring in somebody to close out the game. The Twins had to use 2 different pitchers to finish off the game after Pablo Lopez went 6. Like, the Twins were actively using their arms to pitch up until they brought in Willie Castro for the 9th inning. But you get my point, is something's got to be done, because it's ridiculous. And here's the thing, there's already had to have been rules basically by Terry Francona doing something along these lines. If you remember the 3-batter minimum, the rule that came into effect, I think in 2020, where if a reliever comes into the game, he has to face 3 hitters unless the inning ends. Like, if it's in the same inning, he has to face at least 3 hitters before you can pull him. And the reason is Terry Francona was the king of warming up a reliever, bringing him in, facing one guy, bringing in another reliever to then pitch. And then, like, he would just swap out relievers all the time. And it basically got baseball to the point where they were like, Terry Francona wasn't the only guy doing this, but he was certainly kind of the guy leading the charge of treating his bullpen like that. And they had to change rules in Major League Baseball for that. And they probably should change the rules in Major League Baseball to prevent position players pitching like that. Honestly, I think I would just ban position players pitching unless you classify a guy as an actual pitcher like Shohei Ohtani. And you have to kind of make some rule where the average velocity has to be a certain point. I guess maybe that excludes knuckleballers. I don't know. There has to be some kind of way of the Twins just not being like, yeah, Willie Castro is our extra pitcher, and then never using him unless they got to pitch a position player. But I don't know. There's got to be some kind of way to limit that. There's got to be some kind of way to fix that, because right now it's a BS rule and it's really, really dumb. Anyway, moving into game 2, and that I've gotten that off my chest. The Twins win game 2, and they win game 2 behind some timely hitting that didn't happen right away. The Twins stranded opportunity after opportunity after opportunity with runners in scoring position, and eventually they do break through. The Twins were down 3-2 going into the 6th inning. Christian Vasquez, of all people, hits a home run that sneaks over the fence in right field. Jorge Polanco should have hit a home run, but it was called a double. It was a weird situation. And then the Twins end up breaking the game open with a Donnie Salami triple. It's a triple on paper, but Miles Straw completely misplayed a ball in center field. And this is the interesting thing, is there's been a lot of Guardians fans talking smack on Twitter. Now, part of it's just classic, my team's better than your team smack. It's nothing out of the ordinary. But one of the things of Guardians fans, and the one things that they had, rightfully so, especially after last year, to cling their hat on was, well, at least we play good defense, and at least we, do things that, like, we bunt when we need to, play small ball. The Twins basically blew the doors off them. The defense for Minnesota wasn't necessarily great, but the Twins, they hit a ton of home runs. The Twins hit the ball really hard. But Cleveland, their calling card was, well, at least we could play good defense and run around the field. And then potentially one of the more simpler plays, or at least a play that seems simple on paper, the Guardians mess it up and it blows the game open in the 8th inning, and the Twins take an 8-3 lead. They go on to win by that score. And it's really fascinating because I've seen Twins Twitter. There's a few different factions of Twins Twitter. There's the more traditional guys. There's the more analytically minded guys. There's just people out there trolling, and then there's probably other factions. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it was a lot of fun seeing everybody mutually all come together and everybody mutually agree to focus all of their ire on Cleveland and get to have some fun trash talking, because ultimately that's what sports is. Sports is fun because you can trash talk. It's fun. Cleveland did it to the Twins last year. Now Twins fans on Twitter can do the same thing to Cleveland fans this year. It's how it goes. And, roles could be reversed next year. Maybe the White Sox will finally enter the chat. Maybe the Tigers will finally enter the chat for the first time in 10 years. I don't know. But it's been fun seeing Twins Twitter come together like that and kind of all get together to trash talk a team. And I hope that continues through the rest of the season, because it's fun. I'm not a good smack talker on Twitter. I'm not very good at the tweets. I do a lot of them. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm good. Follow me at BombCJ30, by the way, on Twitter for the plug, again, or X or whatever it's called now. But it's just fun to be on Twitter and to get to mess around and have people kind of come together to say, my team is better than yours. The nana and a boo-boo, stick your head in doo-doo kind of deal. It's been really fun. And I thought it's been fun to see Twins fans kind of come together to celebrate the Twins basically putting the division on ice. Now, they lost today's game 2-1. Joe Ryan pitched, I think, only 4 innings. And there's a rain delay in between in the 3rd. That was about an hour long. So Ryan was already kind of out of his rhythm, still pitched 4 innings, only gave up 2 runs. And then Louis Varland came in to pitch a few innings. Cody Funderburk came in to pitch a few innings. And Funderburk came in a pretty high leverage spot with 2 on, nobody out. Did a good job retiring the 2, 3, 4 hitters. Funderburk feels like a guy that the Twins are like, dude, we don't know if you're good or not in this situation, but you're here. And we kind of just need to see, because we need to figure out a bullpen hierarchy. And please, for the love of all that is good and holy, we're crossing our fingers. Please be good in high leverage situations. At least it feels like that's the Twins' attitude toward Cody Funderburk. Remember, they brought him in last week and he gave up a 3-run bomb in extra innings. And then today he comes in and pitches really well. So hopefully that's a feather in the cap for Funderburk and he can keep that rolling. In the Twins, they could get another lefty with Thielbar in the bullpen. Things do open up a little bit there. So ultimately the Twins take 2 out of 3 games in Cleveland. They pad the AL Central lead to 6 games. And really, it's 5 games. It's been beaten to death, but really it's 5 games because there is no tiebreaker. There is no game 163 anymore because of the wild card series and the expanded postseason. Uh, there is no game 163 like the Twins had against the White Sox in 08 or against the Tigers more famously in 2009. So that means that the Guardians, because they won today's game and they won the season series, that's the first tiebreaker. So which means if the Twins were to tie the Guardians at the end of the season, Cleveland would win the division. Now, so the Twins basically went from a 4-game lead to a 5-game lead, realistically speaking. So a 5-game lead, and let's double check this. The Twins record, how many more games? I'm going to pull this up on the standings here, so bear with me as I'm talking through while I wait for my phone to load, and I'm sure it will definitely load very fast as now I need it to actually do something. So the Twins right now, their record is currently 73-67. So they've played 140 games. They have 22 games to go. And the Twins have 22 games left. I mean, Fangraphs yesterday when they won gave them like a 98.5% chance to win the AL Central. I highly doubt it has gone down by that much really over the last handful of hours. So I'm still going to say the Twins are in the driver's seat to win the American League Central in like a, look, man, I'm going forward as if the Twins are making the playoffs. And if they somehow make this thing interesting, then that says a lot more about the Twins. And if they somehow blow this, then we got to ask ourselves a lot of questions. We're going to get to kind of the rest of the schedule and looking ahead and doing all that in just a second. But again, the Twins win. They win big. They get 2 out of 3. They push Cleveland back. And I thought Rocco Baldelli had a really good series as manager, and maybe not necessarily in terms of on-field moves, because you can make the criticisms of Rocco emptying the bench too early. You can make the case of the pulling pitchers too early. You can make the case, whatever. I'm not saying that all of them are good or have a ton of merit, but you can make those cases. And Rocco, I thought, had a good series 1 because he got his guys out of there in game 1 when the thing was starting to get hairy. Like when Cleveland brought in the position player, Baldelli's like, anybody of value, you're off. You're not playing today. You're done for the night. Game number 2, there was a situation where Sonny Gray had 2 on and 1 out in the 6th inning, and Rocco came out and talked to him. And after the game, Rocco Baldelli basically said, because I think the question was asked, were you going out there to pull him out? And if so, what did he say to you to keep in the ball game? And, whether you believe that, whether you believe, Rocco is kind of trying to save his own butt, or whether you believe that he was being genuine, I believe the second one, is that Rocco's like, I came out to see, like, I was going to give him the opportunity to try and finish that. And I was going to see how he responded to me, which is what you should do as a manager. Because sometimes guys are actually begging to get pulled from games, but they don't want to be the one looking at the sideline like a freshman on the basketball team who's out of shape, grabbing his jersey and like pulling it up and down, being like, coach, you got to pull me out. I'm too tired. These guys aren't going to do that, and especially not Sonny Gray. So Rocco Baldelli went out there, and he's like, it's not just that he said, I think I can get these guys. It's that he looked at Rocco and said, I can get these guys. Give me the ball. And Rocco's like, okay, it's yours. And Sonny Gray got out of the jam. He pitched 6 innings, gave up 3 runs. That, my friends, is called a quality start. And that means that it gave the Twins an opportunity then 7-8-9 to finish out the ballgame. I believe Pagan, of all people, finished it out. So Thielbar got some work in. Jax got some work in as well in that game. But overall, the Twins were able to win. Rocco Baldelli, whether it's going with his gut, whether it's going with what the spreadsheet said, I don't really care. Point is, good move by Rocco. Good job there. And also good job after that game on Monday night when the Twins won 20-6. He was asked, I think, by Audra Martin of Bally after the game of like, do you see this as a statement win? You came into Cleveland, you punched him in the mouth. I'm paraphrasing. But do you see this as a statement win? And Rocco Baldelli pretty much did his best Kobe Bryant impression. There's that famous interview of Kobe Bryant after a playoff game. I think it was like game 1 of a series. And it's like, are you happy with today's game? And he just was very bluntly like, no. Everyone's like, what do you mean? He's like, job's not done yet. And that was essentially the same energy Rocco Baldelli had. He's like, yeah, it's great. We won a game. We won it 20-6. That's awesome. But that's just one game. And tomorrow the score is 0-0. And it doesn't matter what happened the night before. I'm paraphrasing, but again, that's kind of what he said. And that's a really good answer. It's the reason why, for better or worse, Rocco Baldelli is the Twins manager. He does not get too high. He does not get too low typically. And Rocco Baldelli, for better or worse, that is his best attribute as a manager. It is a 162 game marathon. And the Twins from 2019, even the Bomba squad had their ups and downs, and they had to fight with Cleveland to finish out the season for the AL Central title. Twins had to fight it out for the White Sox at the end, with the White Sox at the end for the AL Central title in 2020. They were able to do that. Twins had a lot of ups and downs this year last year and the year before, and even really a lot of ups and downs this year. But Rocco Baldelli, outside of a few moments where he kind of blew up, the most famous one being after the Atlanta series and things like that, and going, things need to change. With Rocco Baldelli, he's never been too high, never been too low. He's even keel. And in an 162 game marathon, you do need that out of a manager. It's boring for fans. And does everybody wish he'd be like Gardy and show a little bit more emotion? Sure. Does everybody wish that maybe he would do things more like Tom Kelly? Sure. But I think the best attribute of Rocco Baldelli is keeping everybody calm, cool, and collective, because there's a lot of times when the Twins could have just given up and they didn't, or the Twins kind of could have had finger pointing. They could have had some kind of clubhouse breakdown and they didn't. And Rocco Baldelli has kind of kept them together in that way. And I think that's, again, Rocco Baldelli's fine. For what you want in a manager in 2023, he's fine. I don't feel any strong feelings of like Rocco's the best manager of all time. No. I mean, realistically, TK is still the best manager in the Twins. Gardy's number 2. Baldelli maybe number 3, depending on how you feel about 1 year of Billy Martin. Gene Mauch, was he the other Twins manager? There's probably some other guys in there, but none of them have been very good. Basically, it's Tom Kelly, Gardy, and if we're going to go by just success, you have Rocco. So the Twins right now Baldelli's fine. He's fine. The Twins have a fine manager in Baldelli. It's a very passive fine. It's not a passive aggressive fine. It's just a passive. He's fine. He is who he is. He's got his flaws. I don't necessarily like emptying the bench so fast all the time. I don't necessarily agree with all the pitching moves, but at the end of the day, like, you're going to find fault with every manager. So I think I'm not in the pro Rocco. I'm not in the anti Rocco. I'm in the Rocco camp, or like the, I don't know if there's any modifier. I'm in the fine, Rocco's fine camp in terms of that. But I thought he had a really good series as manager. I thought he did a really good job keeping everybody together, keeping them not high, not too low, but also there is that intensity. There was like that, we just kicked their butts. Let's go back tomorrow and do it again. And the Twins did. And they won 2 games out of 3. And they basically put away any doubt that Cleveland was going to come back and try and make some noise in the AL Central. All right. So one other thing I do want to mention is Royce Lewis, Mr. Grand Slam. He does it again, in the words of Dick Bramer. He crushed that. He crushed that Grand Slam. Royce Lewis came up 2 outs, top of the 2nd inning, bases loaded. Twins were already up 2-0. And Royce Lewis was facing Giolito. And Giolito, who just walked a guy in the at-bat before, threw 2 pitches that were nowhere close to the strike zone for Royce Lewis. And I was watching the game on my phone. I was sitting there looking at it, and I was talking to myself, and I said, Royce Lewis can do one of 2 things here. He's seen 2 straight pitches that are nowhere near the zone, and the other guy walked. So his thought could either be, keep taking and make Giolito throw me a strike. Let me see how far I can get. The bases are loaded. Maybe I could draw a walk and try and help that out. The other train of thought is, okay, man, this guy has thrown 6 straight balls or whatever it is. He has not been close to the strike zone at all. He's going to have to throw this one right down the pipe, and I am going to gear up and I am going to crush it. And as soon as I thought, I'd probably swing away, like Royce Lewis is already swinging, and he crushed that ball. And that's kind of fun, because I was literally thinking, that's the fun of baseball, is you can kind of think and strategize while everything is going on. And I just thought, I'm like, Royce Lewis, does he swing away? He'll probably get a pretty good pitch to hit, but if you're wrong, are you going to swing, or are you going to offer at a pitch that's not even close to the strike zone? Lewis guessed a pitch over the plate. He got one. He crushed it. Royce Lewis hit his 3rd Grand Slam in 8 days. That is something that nobody has done since Lou Gehrig. He played baseball in the 1930s. Lou Gehrig is a guy who Royce Lewis is in company with. It's incredible. Royce Lewis, I believe, has 13 career home runs, 14 career home runs. 3 of them four of them, are grand slams. Three of them have been hit against the Guardians. And if you listen to the call, there's a bunch of people on Twins Twitter who have the radio call of Tom Hamilton, the play-by-play guy for the Guardians, and you could just hear it. You could hear like the disgust in his voice. It's like, he's hit another grand slam. Just like he is not happy at all that Royce Lewis basically is the new mayor of Cleveland. It was fun. It's fun to watch Royce Lewis do that. He's fun. He's energetic. We've talked about Royce Lewis on this podcast before, but he's got face of the franchise vibes. He's got a guy that everybody wants to get around. He's young. He's fun. He's humble. He seems kind of down to earth. I mean, really, Royce Lewis is a guy that the Twins can build around. And he's doing this all after back-to-back knee surgeries. So he's missed the last 2 years basically because of an ACL. He didn't play a minor league season at all in 2020, and his numbers were pretty underwhelming in 2019 in the minors. Like Royce Lewis was the top prospect because of his number 1 overall pick status, but he wasn't necessarily shooting up the boards in the Twins system until last year when he started crushing in AAA. And even then, that was a small sample size. So Royce Lewis has been able to do all of this basically off pure talent alone. And it's why he was a number 1 overall pick, is because he was so talented. Now, granted, it was also because, the Twins they didn't feel like they were going to be able to sign Hunter Green coming out, who I thought the Twins should have drafted. But, if Royce Lewis is your consolation prize, I will take that 10 times out of 10. Royce Lewis has face of the franchise vibes. He's got starting third baseman for a long time vibes, or maybe starting second base, depending on how the Twins want to juggle around next year's offseason. But really, it's crazy how Royce Lewis is this good, this quick, because it feels like it's all talent alone. And the crazy thing is, once Royce Lewis figures out, he still chases a lot. He swings and misses a lot because he's a rookie, because he doesn't quite know what big league pitching is yet. You saw this in like a recent case with Alex Kirilloff. He had a high swinging rate. He had a high whiff rate. He had a high strikeout rate in his first year in the majors. And then over the next couple of years, things cooled off. He figured it out, and the strikeout numbers went down dramatically. The walk numbers increased, and that's the thing with Royce Lewis that I think can happen. Royce Lewis is a really good player, and he has no idea what he's doing, and I mean that in the best way possible. So once Royce Lewis does figure out what he's doing, it's over for the rest of the AL Central. Done. Royce Lewis, face of the franchise level. By the way, also your Twins prospect note, Walker Jenkins continues to crush in single A. And Brooks Lee, the number 5 overall pick number 8 overall pick from a year ago, he had a grand slam yesterday for the St. Paul Saints. Walker Jenkins and Brooks Lee kind of injected some prospect capital into this Twins organization. Walker Jenkins, especially with the Twins winning that draft lottery, getting the 5th overall pick when they should have been slotted as like the 13th overall pick, was great for them. The Twins get a guy who would have been a number 1 overall prospect in some drafts, and Twins are taking advantage of it with Walker Jenkins. Now, he's a high schooler, so he's not going to make it to the Twins for at least 2 more years, but man, he's a fast riser. He's already feeling competent at single A, low single A. So does next year he start in Cedar Rapids and spend the whole year there, and then in 2025 he's in double A, and when you're in double A, you're a stone's throw away from the major leagues. That could be a thing. That could be a little bit of wish casting. Maybe there's some regression that takes place next year. But the point is, the Twins got the number 8 overall pick because Brooks Lee fell into their laps. And that's how they were able to take him. The Twins got lucky. They were able to get Walker Jenkins with the 5th overall pick. That is something that is going to be useful as well. And it's really helped out the Twins. Twins also have Emmanuel Rodriguez, who is in Cedar Rapids this year. He's crushing. The Twins have Brooks Lee in AAA. They have Austin Martin in AAA. David Festas in AA as a pitcher. This is kind of that. I've equated it to the early 2000s Twins, where prospects are slowly breaking through. You had your Hunters, you had your Mornos, your Mauers, and these guys just getting through and making an impact. And the Twins have a chance to do that now for the next few years, to have some prospects keep coming up and keep replenishing this team. It's really, really fun to see. Anyway, so that's your prospect catch up there. Any other notes that we had to talk about here on the podcast? I'm trying to think. The Twins won 2 out of 3. September, Correa continues to roll. Correa had a couple RBIs so far in this series in Cleveland. He had a home run on Monday night. Carlos Correa had a go-ahead RBI on Saturday night in extras. He had a game-tying RBI on Sunday. Now the Twins are going to lose that. But the point is September Carlos Correa appears to be back, and nothing would make me happier as a Twins fan than seeing Carlos Correa back, hitting really well, especially at this time of the year. Now, we talked either on this podcast or the one before it about September Carlos Correa and how important he would be for the Minnesota Twins if he could show up even at all. And we've seen it. The Twins lineup has helped out. Now, how sustainable is this? Could Carlos Correa fall off? Sure. But I'm going to take September Correa at-bats when I can get them. Because if you remember, Carlos Correa had a really good September last year, and everybody said, oh, perfect. He's going to stat pad his way into free agency. Now he's with the Twins, and nobody seems to care that he's playing well in September, or at least the negative Twins fans maybe are seeming to ignore that, excuse me. But really, Carlos Correa is in a good spot. He's starting to hit a little bit more. Is he going to, make his season stat line look great? No. But can Carlos Correa give me really, really good production over the next few weeks? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. That's September Carlos Correa for you. And on top of September Carlos Correa, he's also one of the most decorated postseason players ever. I think he has the most postseason RBIs by anybody ever. So Carlos Correa knows how to win in October. Carlos Correa knows how to win in September. It's why the Twins are starting to close this out. All right, so let's finish off the podcast here by talking about a couple different things. So first off, I want to talk about the return of Joe Ryan. And the big thing with the return of Joe Ryan was, how is he going to look? He's coming back from the groin strain, and the Twins really, really need a guy to step up. If you look at Dallas Keuchel, he's got an ERA of 6. He's not doing anything. You look at Bailey Ober, the Twins sent him down last week to try and make room for Louis Varland, which is a shocking move at the time, but they're basically sending Bailey Ober down there to rest up and to get ready to come back at some point this year. But I think there's like a 15-day, 10-day minimum to call somebody back up after you sent them down from AAA for pitchers. And I think it's to prevent guys from just going up and down and up and down and up and down. Kenta Maeda has been good this season, really solid, especially coming after the Tommy John surgery, but he's starting to fade a little bit and is really more used as a kind of weapon out of the bullpen for as a long reliever, excuse me. He had a really good track record of doing that for the Dodgers. And so it would make sense that the Twins would want to put him in that role again this year, which means that Joe Ryan has a spot in the playoff rotation, basically begging for him to take it. Because Pablo Lopez has an ERA of, I think, 3.5 since the All-Star break. Sonny Gray has an ERA just under 3. The Twins are rolling when it comes to their top end of their starting pitching. But then the bottom end of the rotation is starting to leak a little bit. Now it's still, by the rest of baseball standards, a pretty darn good rotation top to bottom. But by the standard the Twins have set for themselves this season, it's been a little leaky, to say the least. So Joe Ryan needed to come in and have a couple good starts, and a couple good starts he did, both of them coming against the Texas Rangers, one at Target Field and one in Texas. And really, when you look at the makeup of the Twins this year, their starting pitcher's ERA is 3.64. It's second in baseball, and they led the league with 517 innings pitched as from starters as well. The Twins' ERA for starters was low. They were throwing them a lot of innings. Things seem to be turning around for the Twins rotation up until everybody except for Lopez and Gray kind of started to fall off a little bit. And now Joe Ryan is back. And not only is Joe Ryan back, he has looked better. Because if you remember that stretch that Joe Ryan was in just, 2 months ago, it was not good. Because if Joe Ryan coming to that from the start of the season, coming to that start on June 22nd against the Boston Red Sox, Ryan had 9.5 K per 9, a 201 opponent batting average, and a 2.98 ERA in 15 starts over 93 and 2/3 innings, and he only allowed 8 home runs total in that span. Things got really sideways. Joe Ryan's ERA from basically late May or early June to late August was 8.63. That was the ERA in only 32 1/3 innings pitch. He allowed 17 home runs. 17. It's crazy. And he pitched really, really, really well for the Rangers the last couple days. Joe Ryan only gave up 2 home runs so far. In that instance, he gave up no home runs again today, pitching against Cleveland. The ERA is down. The strikeouts are still there. The one thing you could say is, home runs still might be an issue for Joe Ryan, but at the end of the day, the Twins are still in a really good spot, and Joe Ryan is in a really good spot to make a playoff start as either the 1, the 2, or the 3 option. So what allows you to use Louis Varland and Kenta Maeda as long relief guys who can shut things down. It's why you're comfortable making some of the moves that you are if you're the Minnesota Twins. Because Joe Ryan coming back into this rotation means a whole lot. He was a potential all-star. Sonny Gray got selected over him mainly because, Pablo Lopez, got selected over him mainly because of name recognition, I think. And that's it. But Joe Ryan, and he also got hurt, did Joe Ryan, right before the All-Star breaker, or declined that he would go because he didn't quite go on the injured list until after. I'm trying to remember. It's a complicated situation. But all I remember is that the Twins were in a rough spot and they needed something kind of fixed fast. So there you go. There is the kind of Twins update in terms of pitching. Let's take one final look on the podcast and let's talk about the Twins' upcoming schedule. They play the Mets and the Rays, both series at Target Field. Both series are 3 games. I think the Twins will go 3-3 in the stretch because here's the thing. The Twins' magic number is 17 games. There's 22 left to go. If the Twins won half of those games, they win 11, which means the magic number for Cleveland is down to 6. And can Cleveland go 16-6 in the final 22 games of the year? No, they're better off declining. They're better off being done on that one. So the division is open for the Twins to take. Everything is set up in their favor. They just need to go do it and get the job done. And they're put themselves in a great position to do that. And again, if they can go 3-3 over the next week, they'll just keep that train rolling. Obviously, in a 17 or a 16 game winning streak would be ideal, but you're just not going to get that. The Twins, however, do have a pretty favorable stretch for the rest of the season. They play the Mets again this weekend at Target Field, the Rays on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Target Field as well. And then they go to the White Sox for 4 games in the middle of September before going to Cincinnati for 3. And then they also play the Angels for 3 games and they play the A's for 3 games. And they finish off the 2023 calendar season with the Colorado Rockies. There's a lot of last place. There's a lot of bad teams in there. There's a lot of wins for the taking if the Twins can just play up, show ball, and get things done the way they need to. The Twins are going to win the American League Central way sooner than you think. All right, that is going to do it for me. I'm CJ Baumgartner. This has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Give it a 5-star rating. It always helps us out. As always, go check out the pages on Apple can't talk today. Go check out the pages on Facebook. Go check out the pages on Twitter, and also as well on wherever, on all kind of social media sites. Find us on X, find us on Twitter, find us on the Bird app, find us on Tweeter, Twatcher, whatever you want to call it as well. So there you go. This has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. We got more to come later on as the Twins get closer and closer to finishing up the division. We have a couple guests that we're hoping to get lined up and on the podcast as well. And we're hoping to do a mailbag. We're hoping to get into some of that as well. If you want to be on a mailbag, simply just reach out to me on Twitter at bombcj30.com. Email the link, email the link bombcj30@gmail.com. Had my work email. I kind of screwed up there off the top of my brain. If you have a question, email me at bombcj30.com, bombcj30@gmail.com. Find me on X at bombcj30. Also message the Minnesota Sports Podcast or tweet at them. That's a good way to get your question mentioned on the air, because we're going to hopefully start to do a little bit more mailbags soon, especially since the Twins are starting to clinch the American League Central, or at least get close enough where, okay, time to talk about playoff opponents. And once that gets boring, then we get to round out the season talking a little bit of mailbag and a little bit of other things you guys are sending my way. So fun to see the Twins win. Twins again, magic number is 17. Twins have a 6-game lead in the American League Central, but it's really a 5-game lead. But hey, who's counting? The Twins win. They're ready to go. I'm ready to go. Sko Twins. This has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. We will catch you next time. See ya.